The call arrived without warning. The photographer spoke softly. "Sir, there's something you need to see. Please, don't tell your son yet." By the time the next sunset came, I would uncover the truth about my daughter-in-law and the depth of her betrayal toward both my son and me. Before I begin, let me just say thank you. If you're here listening, that means more than you can imagine. Some stories weigh heavy on the heart, and sharing them feels a little lighter when someone's on the other side. Tell me where you're tuning in from, and if these life lessons mean something to you, hit subscribe. Your support helps an old man keep telling the truth, one story at a time. When you reach my age, life finds its rhythm. Quiet mornings. A warm mug between your hands. Joints that remind you the body has its own calendar, one that doesn't ask your permission. My name's Arthur Reynolds. I'm 70, a retired shop teacher. My hands are still rough from years spent guiding teenagers through sawdust, nails, and stubborn wood, but steady enough now to hold a cup of coffee and a memory without trembling. I live in Santa Mesa, California, a town where people still wave without thinking twice. The hardware clerk remembers which screws you like, and the park's old clock has been stuck for years. Nobody ever fixed it because, well, imperfections make a place feel honest. It's been 10 years since my wife, Linda, passed. Just me now, living inside the routines we built together. I learned to cook more than eggs. I kept her rose bushes alive, even if half still lean like they're undecided which way the sun will fall. And each evening, I settle into my porch chair, watching daylight fade behind the lemon trees. Time, once again, apologizing for leaving too soon. My son Michael has always been my pride. An engineer out in Phoenix, steady, sharp, and good in the kind of way you can't really teach. That's something you're born with. Every Sunday, he calls just like he promised his mother. In this family, we don't break promises. Not if you were raised right. So, when he told me he'd found the one, my heart swelled inside my chest, like a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Her name was Lauren Hayes. Bright smile. Smooth, confident voice. A woman whose ambition could slice glass. She talked about investments and markets the same way I used to talk about oak grain and dovetail joints, different trades, same devotion. She looked at my boy as if the world finally made sense when he entered the room. And for a widower who'd spent years praying his son would find a love that real, that was more than enough. Their wedding felt like it was lifted straight from a magazine, an outdoor garden in Scottsdale, lanterns glowing like scattered stars. I wore the suit Linda had picked for our 40th anniversary and could almost feel her hand resting on my arm, whispering, "Look at us, Arthur. We did good." From the front row, I stood tall, heart full, watching Michael's eyes glisten as Lauren walked toward him, a young man holding his future with trembling hands, just as I once had. I leaned toward an old fishing buddy beside me and said, "Our kids passed us by, didn't they?" He nodded, smiling that quiet father's smile, the kind that hurts just a little because pride always does. The reception was a blur of laughter, speeches, and camera flashes. Her family went all out, silver cutlery gleaming under string lights, music floating through the air, champagne flowing as if the earth itself had sprung a tap. I even danced once. Careful, slow. The knees complain, sure, but joy carries you farther than your joints ever could. That night, back in my hotel room, I loosened my tie, sat on the bed's edge, and stared up at the ceiling. In that soft silence, I whispered, "Linda, our boy's in good hands." And for months afterward, I truly believed he was. I cared for the roses, sipped my morning coffee on the porch, and shared slow conversations with the same regulars at the diner, old-timers debating fishing lures like senators hashing out world affairs. Every so often, Michael would send a picture, desert hikes, wine tastings, dinners lit by candles that seemed to soften the edges of everything around him. He looked content. And seeing him that way, that was the quiet triumph of being a father. One afternoon, sunlight brushed across the porch rail, and I remember thinking maybe life had finally settled into its gentler season, a chapter of steady pride, watching my son build a family as I once did. I brushed the dust from my old workbench, the air rich with cedar and memory. I thought about making them a cedar jewelry box for their first anniversary, something carved with love and tradition. At night, I'd close the curtains, look out over the yard, and whisper a small prayer, "Keep him safe. Let him be loved." Let him stay kind. And I meant every word with all that was left in my chest. But life doesn't always give warning before the ground shifts. Sometimes the storm drifts in quietly, like a shadow crossing your porch, soft as dust settling on old frames. I didn't know it yet, but those calm nights, those easy breaths of peace, were the last before everything tilted. Because just when a man starts to think his battles are behind him, life reminds him peace is only borrowed, never promised. And that peace, mine, was about to end. It began on an ordinary Tuesday. Funny how the biggest cracks in life rarely announce themselves with thunder, just a phone buzzing on the counter and a voice carrying something heavy underneath. Mr. Reynolds, it's Colin, the wedding photographer. His voice was strained, uncertain. I need you to come in, please. And, don't tell your son yet. My stomach didn't drop, it tightened the way it does when a man who's lived long enough recognizes the scent of trouble. Is Michael all right? I asked. A pause, then a weary breath. Yes, sir, he's fine. But, there's something you need to see. He told me to come alone. That word, alone, hit like a hammer in my hand. I pulled on my oldest cardigan, the one with the loose button, and drove. Phoenix traffic crawled, each red light pounding seconds into my ribs. I didn't even know what I feared, only that fear had taken the passenger seat. Colin's studio was dim. Camera gear scattered across tables. His beard was unkempt, his eyes red and restless, the look of a man who'd spent too many nights losing arguments with sleep. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. No small talk. No coffee. No soft landing. Just a laptop slid toward me. Please, look. The first photo appeared Lauren, my daughter-in-law, still in her wedding gown. But not on the dance floor, not beside my son. She stood near the service exit, half hidden, her arms wrapped around a man in a dark suit. His hand rested on the small of her back, the kind of touch that belongs to someone claiming what's his. My breath escaped slow. That wasn't a hug. That wasn't family affection. That's not Michael, I whispered. Colin nodded, voice rough. His name's Ethan Ward. Supposedly her cousin. But he's also her business partner. Business partner. The phrase had teeth. More photos. Time stamps. Lauren slipping away during speeches. Ethan leaving minutes later. Her return, hair slightly tousled, makeup fixed in a rush. I said nothing. Men my age don't shout when they bleed. We just bleed quietly. Mr. Reynolds, Colin continued, they've been secretly running a financial firm for years, preying on older investors, the vulnerable ones. He spread documents across the desk, company filings, transfers, names. My mother, he whispered, voice cracking. She trusted them. Lost everything. Died thinking it was her fault. His eyes were hollow. It wasn't. They took it. I sat back, letting the truth settle, heavy, fine as sawdust in the lungs. Then came the final blow. Sir, he said softly, from what I found, it looks like you were next. The air turned cold. Not from fear, from clarity. Lauren hadn't married my son for love. She'd married him as part of a plan. My boy wasn't her partner. He was her doorway. I was the vault. My fingers locked together, knuckles white but steady, the kind of focus that comes right before making a cut in wood you can't undo. Colin's eyes stayed on me, waiting for me to break. But once a man has already buried the love of his life, pain stops breaking you. It starts shaping you instead. Does my son know? I asked. Colin shook his head. No. Good, I said. He deserves one more night of peace before everything changes. Show me everything. He did. Footage. Bank statements. Forged investments. Names of the elderly, some I recognized from the wedding, faces that had once smiled in celebration, now exposed as part of something deceitful. When the final image disappeared, I didn't cry. I didn't lash out. I just breathed slow, measured until the air stopped shaking in my lungs. My son will not be ruined by this, I whispered. And she will not take another thing from him. Or from anyone. No fury. No vengeance. Only resolve. I stood, feeling every year behind me and every year ahead sharpening into purpose. Colin swallowed hard. Mr. Reynolds, what are you going to do? I looked toward the exit, the same door she had slipped through on her wedding night, and said quietly, steady as a blade, I'll stay silent for now, but not for long. I didn't shout. I didn't crumble. But inside, something clicked, final, fixed, immovable. That was the moment I realized silence wasn't surrender. It was preparation. When I got home, I left the lights off. The house felt changed, not unfamiliar, just heavier. As if the walls already knew. As if the air itself understood that something sacred had cracked. I hung my keys on the hook like always, but even that small sound felt like a door closing on a chapter one hadn't known I was finishing. I sat at the kitchen table, palms flat, breath steady, too steady, the kind of calm that comes when your heart hasn't caught up to what your mind already knows. No tears. No outburst. Just silence, settling in my bones like winter air. In the dim room, I listened to the hum of the refrigerator, to the ticking clock marking seconds that refused to stop, no matter how much I wanted them to. My son's happiness, the only light I'd clung to for months, now felt fragile, a candle flickering in a draft. I pushed away from the table, walked out to the porch, and eased into my old rocking chair. The wood groaned beneath me, both of us worn by time. Above the lemon trees, the stars hung soft and still. Linda used to sit right there beside me, legs tucked under a blanket when the breeze picked up, humming to some tune only she could hear, tapping her thumb against her cup. I rubbed the ring on my keychain until the metal warmed under my thumb. Linda, I breathed, barely a whisper. I wish you were here. I wish you could help me hold him through this. Grief doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just waits, a quiet weight behind your ribs, pressing every time you draw breath. I remembered Michael as a boy, hair sticking up after sleep, shoes always untied no matter how many times I'd shown him double knots. Running toward me shouting, Dad, watch this, right before doing something reckless and unnecessary. Linda would laugh and say he never inherited the caution gene. He loved fiercely then, just as he loved her now. And that same fearless heart was about to be broken by truth. Some nights, you don't cry because you're strong. You don't cry because if you start, you might never stop. I got up again, restless. Poured tea I didn't plan to drink. Watched the steam rise, curling upward like it was trying to get away too. My phone buzzed. A message from Michael. Love you, Dad. Hope you're holding up okay. I sat staring at the screen, typing a few words, erasing them, then trying again. Every version sounded either too heavy or too empty. In the end, I just wrote, love you too, son. Sometimes love means keeping the truth quiet until the other person is strong enough to face it. The next morning, more out of routine than appetite, I tried to make breakfast. The toast stayed untouched, and the coffee turned cold before I ever lifted the cup. I wandered outside, hose in hand, watering roses that didn't need it. Their petals drooped under the excess, drinking more than necessary, just as I was carrying more than I could hold. The neighbor's cat strolled over, tail high like he owned the block. I scratched behind his ear because sometimes your hands need to comfort something when your heart still can't comfort itself. Back inside, I picked up a silver frame from the bookshelf, our family photo. Michael in his cap and gown, Linda leaning her head on my shoulder, my arm wrapped around them both, like nothing could ever break that circle. I brushed my thumb across the glass slowly. You didn't do anything wrong, I murmured to my son's smiling face. You just loved the wrong person. The ache inside me didn't flare up, it settled, soft as dust after sanding, smooth, but scarred. That night, when I finally lay down, sleep refused to come. The ceiling just stared back. Sometime after midnight, my breathing shifted, not heavier, just clearer, steadier. I sat up, feet planted on the floor. No rush, no fear, just a quiet sense of purpose filling the space where pain used to live. A man learns, eventually, that some storms aren't meant to drown him, they're meant to carve a new river through familiar ground. I took a long breath, hands resting firm on my knees. And in that dark, silent room, I started thinking carefully. Not about pain. Not revenge. But about protecting what I love and doing it with grace. In time, grief had done its work. In its place stood resolve. That night, something inside me sharpened. Before sunrise, I woke, no alarm, just that quiet signal deep inside a man when life stops asking him to feel and starts asking him to act. I splashed water on my face and looked in the mirror at someone shaped by years, loss, love, and lessons time never teaches kindly. Not broken. Not angry. Just certain. The kettle hissed. The coffee bloomed dark and rich. I moved slowly, not because of age, but because every motion had purpose. In my shop class, I used to tell the kids, you rush, you ruin. Whether it's wood, truth, or justice, you can't shape it right if you're in a hurry. So, I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around the warm mug, letting the first light of morning soak into my bones. Then I called Colin. He answered fast, voice rough at the edges like he'd been waiting. I'm ready, I said. 2 words. No anger, just steady ground beneath them. He let out a breath that scraped through the line. We'll do it the right way, sir. Arthur, I corrected quietly. If you're walking into a storm with a man, titles don't matter. We met at a small cafe outside Phoenix, the kind where the coffee tastes slightly burnt, but the air feels thick with honesty. Colin wasn't alone. A woman sat beside him, calm face, clear eyes, the kind that see through lies like glass. Detective Renee Porter, she introduced herself. Financial crimes, elder exploitation. The phrase hit like a slow, driven nail. I took one long breath, not fear, just confirmation. She opened a file, documents, transaction trails, names of victims who'd trusted too easily and lost everything they'd worked their whole lives to save. Mr. Reynolds, she said softly, this isn't only about a broken marriage. It's part of an organized fraud. And we believe she plans to target you next. I nodded once, a small gesture carrying the weight of a lifetime of steady restraint. What's required of me? She examined me closely. Youth often assumes years bring brittleness. Yet experience forges a sturdier resolve. You feign belief in her, she remarked. You allow her to speak. Permit her to believe she's prevailing. And when she stretches too far, I said softly, you're positioned to hear it. She offered a subtle dip of her head. Precisely. Colin pushed an envelope over the surface. Documents, captured images, inked approvals. The pages carried more gravity than their mass, as if grasping reality prior to its solidification into outcome. We mapped the actions, subdued ones, precise ones. No yelling, no disorder, merely endurance, honing. Heading back afterward, arid breeze murmuring along the roadway, I replied in kind, she believes she wedded protection, but I've served as refuge my entire existence, and refuge refuses to yield to predators. Upon arriving home, I approached my writing table, the aged oak piece where Linda penned celebration notes and Michael mastered ledger equilibrium, where existence unfolded in erased marks and sincere aims. I flipped open a journal, not for venting, but for documenting. Individuals, timelines, instances when her inquiries regarding my retirement seemed overly probing, her compliments too flawlessly timed. Trends, warning signs I'd once confused with affection. I donned my spectacles, my fingers firm as I inscribed. Resolve anchors a person more effectively than ego ever managed. Then I phoned Michael. We discussed precipitation and sports and upcoming leisure. He inquired if I'd visited that fresh eatery close to the residence yet. I shared that I felt immense pride in him. I avoided referencing her. Not at this point. Honesty adheres like adhesive only when the moment aligns. Following the conversation, I gazed at Linda's picture. She beamed in return, gaze gentle and unwaveringly sure. You nurtured a tenacious spirit, I said quietly. But I'll handle this properly. That evening, I pressed a garment, not under any insistence, but since self-respect serves as shielding that stays smooth when sourced internally. I buffed my footwear, the hide reflecting illumination like subdued resolve. I halted at the threshold before retiring, palm against the jamb, murmuring, for him, forever for him, the shutterbug shouted, and the course shifted entirely. Yet transformation can arrive as a gift, clad in coarse fabric. The scene was prepared, the parts assigned, and my sole task was to anticipate honesty outshouting deception. I got there ahead of schedule. Seasoned gentlemen usually do, not from eagerness, but from grasping life's cadence. When teetering on revelation's brink, you avoid hastening the instance. You permit it to inhale. Her workspace occupied the upper level of a transparent cube structure. All gloss, lacking essence, artificial foliage, sent overpowering sincerity, the variety of arrangement designed to divert, not soothe. I sported a basic ironed top, shined boots, and the serene assurance of someone who'd weathered tempests grander than this. She grinned upon spotting me. Excessively broad, overly practiced. Ah, you showed. Her tone resembled sweetener with an artificial residue. Indeed, I answered gently. She directed me to a compact meeting surface, dossiers prearranged, writing tools lined up like troops. Authority. That's what she craved or assumed she possessed. This marks the major advance, she trilled. You'll sense such ease afterward. Curious term selection. I dipped my head, enacting the composed elder she'd misjudged. She nudged documents my way. Shift permissions, profile entry sheets, minuscule details slimmer than her allegiance. Simply initial there, and there, she instructed. So we may redirect your savings for optimal yield. Her inflection eased, simulated worry tied with ribbon. You've labored diligently your whole span, Arthur. You merit repose now. Allow us to manage it. I lifted the stylus, rotated it deliberately amid my digits. Prior to affixing, I said low. I'd appreciate your walkthrough once more, phase by phase. Her gaze sparkled like a hunter sighting prey. Naturally, she purred. This procedure flows effortlessly. Your assets shift abroad briefly. Then we channel them via a select backer group. Profits materialize in 90 days. And those profits? I queried softly. They originate from precisely where? She responded without pause. Overconfidence emboldens the unwise. From incoming backer capitals at first, she stated, it's an expansion loop. Ultimately, all evens out. My grip halted midway. There it stood. Admission. Brazen, offhand, oozing conceit. I regarded her extended and measured, not furious, merely gauging the instant. And my offspring? I inquired, did you relocate his assets identically? You ought to, as well. Rely on the concluding spike. I placed the stylus down tidily, intentionally. She scowled, is an issue present? I withheld response initially. Rather, I eased my seat rearward, interlaced my palms serenely atop the surface, and breathed, I believe our business concludes. Her countenance contorted. Dread, ire, awareness of a contest she was abruptly forfeiting. You consented, she snarled. You vowed progression. I reconsidered. You're incapable of that. I already have. Her pitch escalated like shattered shards. Arthur, do you comprehend your jeopardy? I assented gradually. Affirmative. My self-worth, and I refrain from wagering that. Before she could retort, the entrance swung wide. Investigator Porter entered, colleague at side, capture unit gripped. Attired personnel trailing nearby. M. Brooks, the investigator declared evenly. You face detention for monetary deceit, senior manipulation, and investment infractions. Her complexion paled, then reddened, then stiffened, hunter trapped, fangs exposed. You orchestrated this, she snapped. I locked her stare, maintained it firm as rock. No, I stated mildly. You orchestrated your own when selecting avarice over those who relied on you. She surged to seize her device. Personnel halted her mid-grab. Restraints snapped, crisp and conclusive. As they escorted her out, she hurled a final scowl my direction. You assume this concludes with me? I allowed quiet to reply. Certain realities require no air to endure. Once they departed, I released breath. Gradual, profound, stable. Fairness isn't perpetually boisterous. Occasionally it enters a hushed space with firm grips and alert vision. Colin rested a palm on my arm. Your offspring will admire you, I gulped, esophagus constricted. I acted not for acclaim, I breathed. I acted so my lad wouldn't pass his days questioning why existence soured. Beyond, the sunlight felt mild. Not victorious, merely benevolent. And I grasped her insight. Liberty doesn't invariably thunder. Occasionally it sighs.